This episode is brought to you by Updater, the app that gets residents move-in ready faster. Did you know that residents who are happy at their move-in experience are 59% more likely to renew their lease? Move-ins matter. So get them right with Updater. Visit go.updater.com/Mike to learn more and receive a special gift when you book a demo. All right, welcome to another Collective Conversation. I'm your host, Mike Brewer, and I'm joined today by a fantastic Virginia Love industry principal at Entrata. Virginia, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I've been looking forward to this for weeks.
Now, I have to ask, there is a Braves game on right now, and I am a Cubs fan, die hard forever Cubs fan.
It's from someone who didn't really know what baseball was a few days ago, but I'm going to let you have your Cubs fan today. Die-hard Cubs fan, absolutely.
I mean, seriously, I've watched every game dating back to the early 1900s. I
actually turned it off for this because this is important. I silenced my phone, so I will not be getting any score notifications. But a day game on a Friday is a holy, holy thing.
Don't you worry. I'll be keeping track for us.
Yeah. When you start screaming and celebrating and I start crying, everybody will know what's happening.
That's exactly right. All right. And we'll highlight that on the show as if we've not already done that already. All right. Well, let's dive right in, Virginia. I really appreciate you investing a little bit of time with us. I've seen your name around for years and years and years. And until this past Wednesday, we'd not really met, and we still haven't really met in person, but I just really appreciate you taking the time to spend with us.
Thank you for spending time with us as well.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so I'm always interested in opening up a little bit and kind of unpack your journey for us in brief. You worked in the industry and now you serve in the vendor space, and just kind of, Reader's Digest version of that little journey to where you are today.
Oh, sure. So I, like a lot of folks in the industry, got into it just per chance, right? Like I didn't go to college to get into property management. I graduated from the University of Southern Mississippi. I moved to Atlanta after a couple of years to see a friend of mine who's also in the industry. Interestingly enough, he jumped in before I did. And while we were out looking for an apartment, we ran across a manager from Trammell Crow who just was the most fun. He was kind of sarcastic and he didn't take things too seriously. And we just sort of connected with him. 6 months later, I was just doing all kind of different jobs in Atlanta because I have a theater background. So you just kind of do all different kind of jobs, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's like, y'all ought to come lease apartments. Well, you'll remember, a lot of people remember back in the day when you picked out an apartment, you found it in the newspaper or somebody told you about it. You met a super. And, this was no like golf cart, Otis Spunkmeyer cookie situation. I didn't know what we were doing. I was like, this is wild. I mean, it's like being on a ride at Disney, right? And so he asked us both. He said, y'all ought to apply. So we did. My friend Greg Toomey, went before I did. I followed him about 90 days later, and we both started off as leasing people at Trammell Crow Residential Services. And long story short, I was good at leasing apartments. I'm still good at leasing apartments. And I worked my way up through the site level to corporate support, training, marketing, operations, and left 12 great years at Waterton to join Entrata 4 years ago. And that was in June as industry principal. So it was an interesting move, right? Going from the operator space to the supplier space. And I think a lot of people, they told me they were surprised. And then there was another group of people that were like, this made complete sense. But I just wanted to do something different. I wanted to parlay what I knew and use it in a different way. So, on the operator side, you start thinking you go bigger. You go from 20,000 units to 40 to 80 to 120.
That's
bigger
right.
Teams, right? More owners, bigger brands, more layers of brands. And I'd gotten to the point where that's not the growth I want. I wanted a different type of growth, and I wanted to exercise my mind a little bit. All I really wanted was to be utilized and valued wherever I went. And I hit that out of the park at Entrata.
I love that. I want to come back and unpack that story a little bit more in just a second, but so we won't name years, but you've been in the industry for a little bit,
forever. Yeah.
Some little bit of time, maybe forever. So you've seen a lot of change. What has been, like, in your head, the the most impactful change in our industry over that long bit of time that you've been in?
Gosh, I'll say, I have, I mean, I've always been a huge fan of the site team. When I was on the site team, after in support roles, getting to Entrata, and after, I mean, I've been doing this 33 years. It'll be 33 years in October. I have to say that as horrible as COVID was, I had a significant loss. A lot of people had a lot of losses. That the attention the site team got in that situation as essential workers, they always have been. That was not anything new.
Right.
And I've said this 1,000 times, but I really do credit the pandemic with taking a look at folks in these beautiful corporate offices that were working from home in their yoga pants with their dogs at their feet, drinking coffee on their sofa. And then we're asking people who are driving income for the company to come in and wipe down fitness equipment and try to figure out how to lease apartments from 6 feet away. And to me, that was the blessing of the whole situation. And I love nothing more than now you go to conferences or like, NAA, or there's a lot of articles written about how this new attention to the site, are we making decisions based on what's right for the site, not what's right for even the customer or the
Mm-hmm.
accounting department or the owner? What is going to drive performance with the people that are driving performance? And the trends, everything comes and goes in this business. I mean, remember, you'll probably remember too, when mold was a trend, bed bugs were a trend, self-guided tours, centralization, all these things that become mainstays. Every single one of them only works if the people are right. So as again, as horrible and as weird as it was, and it still we all look back on it and think it still feels really weird. That alone really did our folks on the site level a solid. I mean, it gave them the attention they deserve.
I so believe that to be true. And everything that's happened on the heels of that as it relates to wage inflation. I know for the
Yep.
longest bit of time, I can argue that from both perspectives in the seat that I sit, but I think for a long bit of time, people were not really recognized in the ways that they needed to be recognized. And you're right. It was a terrible situation, but it did yield a lot of positive things on the backside.
We did, and we feel like in Entrata, we feel like it pushed technology forward 5 to 7 years too. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I was working with clients and just colleagues in the industry. The beautiful thing about my job is I'm to be a resource for whoever needs me. And folks say, we'll never do self-guided tours. It's all about our people. No one can lease it but us. And then 2 weeks in the pandemic, they're like, "How do we do a self-guided tour?" I mean, they were like,
Yeah.
who cares? We got to do something. So it did move that forward. And there were two types of customers out there. They're the ones that were putting their feet on the gas and saying, let's, let's find this out. Let's figure it out. Keep moving forward. And then there were the group that were like, well, they said it's only going to be 2 weeks. Ha ha. We'll just sit back and wait till things are back to quote unquote normal. But everybody has jumped on, it seems, move forward with technology, whether it's the technology products that are being offered or those that are using it.
Yeah, I believe that to be true. I want to step back for 1 second. You spent a number of years in leasing and marketing,
Mhm.
VP for Waterton, and I imagine you had several roles you played
Yes.
at Waterton. How has that, sort of skipping forward to what you're doing today, how was that time there informative as it relates to what you do today? How
Oh,
important was it for you to spend that time before you got to where you are today?
yeah, that's a great question. When I first started at Entrata, I flew into Utah. It was a secret that I was starting because it was before NAA, and they wanted to make this big announcement. And I was down for the new hire training, which I was there for about an hour and a half. And then I get a text from Chase Harrington, the president, my boss. It says, "I need you to come upstairs and step into a meeting for me." I was like, "Okay, what am I doing?" He's like, "They'll tell you." And I walk in, and it's me and a bunch of engineers, right? Like, I don't know how the sausage is made. I don't know, but I can tell you what I want it to do. And they said they had a problem, and their problem was is we have all these multitude of customers that are doing the same thing different ways. And this one was about a rentable item. And they're like, well, we made this change in the system, and these clients love it, and these clients hate it, and we can't figure out why. And a little known fact, if you are a supplier and you admit that you don't know why, sometimes the operators kind of come at you like, well, you don't know the industry, right? So we try to
Hmm.
avoid that at all cost. I sit down with them and they tell me about it and then they show it to me. And I was like, oh, okay, I can tell you why. Well, it's that this property, the washing machine and dryer is included in the rent, and they just want to be able to track it separately. And then this one,
Hmm.
it's not included in the rent. They can select it if they don't want it. They move the washers or dryers around. They stood up and applauded me. So I got back to Chase's office. He's on the phone. He's like, hold on 1 second. Best hire ever. And like, but that was it. Like that was what I offered, is that I could get to the get faster, right? I can say, this is what they're experiencing, or y'all don't do that right now. This is what's going on in the space. We at Entrata, we take rent week very seriously. Does it always come across perfectly? No. I mean, we have, there's products and there's releases and there's, internet and there's all these things bigger than all of us. But we know that that is, one of the most important things of the job, if not the most important part of the job, is getting money in the bank. But so I can be the voice of reason about, sharing what it's like to be on site. I'll sit down with product folks and they'll say, well, all the leasing team has to do is XYZ and then pull this lever, jump around on 1 foot backwards. And then I was like, it's already dead. We haven't introduced it and it's dead in the water. They don't have time for that, right? So I'm able to bring that experience to the forefront and kind of paint a picture of just, thumbs up, thumbs down a lot of times, or you're going in the right direction, but think about it this way. And I'm not the only industry person that we have at Entrata, but I am the only industry principal that's my sole responsibility.
I got you. I got you.
Yeah.
I want to. So the next question I want to ask you sort of goes back to the last answer that you gave as it relates to technology and how it was sort of accelerated and paced during COVID. Um, and Entrata is certainly known as a very innovative company as it relates to property management systems. And how do you see the technology that Entrata is developed and is developing, and how that is impacting our industry now and go forward?
So that's a good question. I was a customer for 8.5 years, and from the get go, it looked different. It felt different. The interaction with them was different. It was all different, and I don't think that we're not real keen in this business of change. I mean, change on your own terms is really hard when you decide you want to change. But we're really, while our businesses, apartments, and people, we really are playing a game of Monopoly, right? This is a money game, right?
Right.
So the what I noticed when it gets to like started looking at technology is how it has to be layered, and that the I tell our sales folks all the time, it's like people don't cancel products because they don't work. A lot of times they cancel products because they don't utilize them.
That's right.
And so many things that we put on the back to the site team, so many things that we put on the site teams kind of sets things up for failure. And for me, when I look at the solutions that we're doing, we just had our first acquisition on the same week of our 20th anniversary. We purchased Rent Dynamics, a incredible team of folks from Logan, Utah, and we have this remarkable product called Rent Plus that provides rent reporting and financial resources that help promote economic inclusion. So folks can their rent history is reported back so they can build their credit and improve their lives. If you would have told me there was going to be anything like that in the tech space 10 years ago, I'd be like, no, you don't pay, you go into collections. It just, there's what technology has been able to do, not only to, nurture leads and engage residents, but also like, Rent Plus is definitely an ESG move, right? This is something that helps answer the needs for millions and millions of folks. The other part of that I think is fascinating about what we do is that in Entrata, we have about 900,000 student renters, and we are engrossed in that demographic, engrossed. I mean, and for all the courses and sessions that we have gone through all the years about how terrible it was to manage millennials, or, the millennial customer, they were all negative. If you remember, everything was
I
just,
do.
don't you remember? Yeah.
I do.
This generation is so different, and the ESG, DEI, anything that has to do with the environment, the building of community, fellow human beings, uh, they they're 100% for. They're a lot more sympathetic, empathetic, and we know that as those folks go from being a student renter to a conventional renter, those behaviors aren't going to change. Their expectation is, I say all the time, that you're competing against your customer's last best experience. And if their best experience was at Target or Starbucks or Neiman Marcus, they're going to walk into the apartment community and go, I expect the same thing that I just got at Starbucks here. They're not saying, well, it's apartments. That's okay that they're kind of rude and nobody looked at me when I walked in the door. That's fine. They can do that, but I would never allow that at the Marriott Hotel. So
Yeah.
this generation is carrying that philosophy on their back with everything that they do. So we're trying to not only build technology that is going to help our customer and help our customer get to their customer, the resident, but also things that resonate with the consumer. Because we want to make everything super sticky for our customers so they can hold on to that resident for as long as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. That all of that resonates with me, and I think it's 100% true. And I'm interested to know. Um, I want to take a little bit of a left turn here. The
Sure.
culture. You said something uh, that Entrata was different in lots of different respects. The thing that sticks out most to me is completely unrelated to the technology. It is the culture at that
Yeah.
company.
Yeah.
And can you talk about that a little bit? Just sort of off the cuff, the culture, all the fun things that they
Sure.
do.
That was why it looked different, right? And I think Entrado
Mhm.
played a card that we had not seen in the industry before, um, of engrossing the customer in the culture. That back when I was a customer of Entrata, I felt as much a part of their brand as the people that worked there. And I was involved in their brand, and I was ingrained and invested in their brand. And we have several new people in our leadership. We have an investor for the first time in the history of the company, which is fascinating. But they all saw what I saw, and other customers and other associates saw, that this did not, it just didn't look the same. It didn't feel the same. And I remember I was, I think it was OpTech, and I think we were in Las Vegas. And a good friend of mine, Josh McDonald, who now works for CBRE, who's a broker, at the time he was working for Holland. He was working out on the West Coast up in Washington State. And they were at OpTech, they had this little thing where you sat at a table and suppliers bid to spend some time with you, that kind of stuff. And you sit down and have this little chitter chat thing. You remember all that? It's like speed dating
I
or
do.
whatever we called it.
Yeah.
And I did not get the time with Entrata because I was already a customer. They had already had their fun and figured out Virginia and my former boss, Greg Loznak. They figured we had our exchange that got us interested. But I sat next to Josh and saw his exchange, kind of peering in and watching somebody else make a discovery. And while all these other folks were walking up to the table talking about point solutions and SaaS and impact and the bottom line and they walked up and were like, "Hey, we want to, let's just play a game. We're going to play a game with you." And the game that they wanted to play was paper football. Where you
Oh.
do the thing on the little table. And so they're doing the thumb back and forth playing paper football. And they're like, "Okay, listen, if we win, you have to give us your Facebook heavy days. You have to give us your Facebook access for a week.
Oh. That's
And if you win, you get Entradas for a week." And if
oh.
those of you that know Josh McDonald's, he is, I mean, all in all the time. What are we doing? That's a terrible idea. What time? He's all in. He lost because what he didn't know was that these folks at Property Solutions at the time were, they know these games like the back of their hand. And they took his Facebook and they, for a week, had marketing. It's a great, I mean, the photos are fantastic. For a week, had marketing uh, Photoshop his face on other images, like uh, um, the president of Putin going through the horse without the shirt on through the water
Oh no.
with Josh's face on it. Josh with a Christmas sweater holding a bunch of kittens. Josh as a turkey at Thanksgiving every day. And I remember Josh saying to me, that's who I want to do business with. That's who I want to do business with. It's different. It's fun. It resonates with who I am. And they took time to get to know me and knew that I would think this was the best thing ever. I remember every morning we were all, getting on Facebook to see what the picture was. And they probably would have never done that to say my friend Jennifer Sachokis or somebody like that. They did something else, but they took that time to get to know the customer. And we still, as I would put our team, be it sales, service, uh, leadership, up against anybody, and knowing the importance of getting to know the customer before you try to sell them anything. Yeah. Yeah.
It
It's a
it
great story.
oh my goodness. And I mean there are probably 100 other stories similar to that, right? Or
Yeah.
thousands at this point. And that's the thing that just over the I know that name because I associate it with all this incredible fun that
Yeah.
seems to happen there. So I am deeply curious. Is that born out of just some sort of collaboration, or is there somebody in that organization that is just like this idea genius that just
No,
pumps them
I
out?
would say, we've had a lot of changes in up and down of the organization, but at the core of it is entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And uh and not just youth and age, but youth and thought. Like, we don't look at things and go, that's impossible, we'll never be able to do it, that seems crazy. We look at it and go, why not, let's do it. We're not afraid to
Yeah.
fail. We're and we love to take ownership when something isn't like it should be, and we all get real invested in what is going on with the customer. And I think, we recently had, about a year and a half ago, we changed our company values, which had been since the original days of Property Solutions. And things ebb and flow and things change. And at some point, you look back and go, is that really who we still are? And that's
Sure.
and why people go, but we can't change that. We can't do that. You have to. If you don't, you stay the same. So
That's right.
we've reworked the values that we do business around with each other and with our customers, to make sure that they resonate with where we are at the moment, right? And I think that's also something that I was envious of before I became. When I was a customer, I was like always comparing what I had at my previous. We should do it like Entrata does, or Property Solutions at the time. Uh, and you can't put magic. You can't reinvent magic in a bottle and buy it, right? It just is something
No.
that is, it's in the walls, it's in the fabric of the customer. And we like I said, we recently had our 20th anniversary, and we they had this video of people that have been around since almost the beginning, and they all were like, give it in one word, what was it like when we started? Describe it. They're like, scrappy, like four people four guys in a hotel room. Two of them sleep on the floor, right? Like, because it's startup mode, right? And they were telling all these stories about, you know, everybody like working all day and all night, and then like sort of crying in the corner for 30 minutes, going home and coming back and doing it again. Like,
I want my mom.
exactly, what are we doing? This is crazy. Yeah. So, while I got to experience some of that as a customer, it really was a thrill to join the team 4 years ago.
Oh wow. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. That's a little bit of behind the scenes, but it's so wonderful. Okay. So switching back, let's get back to the right hand side of the street. Um, It's a technology company, certainly first and foremost,
Mhm.
but or maybe it's a culture first, then it's a technology company. Um, I have to believe there are scenarios where you have human intuition that trumps the technology. So, in other words, hey, just because we can doesn't mean we should. Are there any
Right.
moments like that where you go, yeah, guys, I get it. We could do
Yeah, yeah,
that,
yeah.
but let's not do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel that way a lot. And I don't, my job is to share and notify and alert and contribute. But, it's like in anything in life. Just because you say it doesn't mean anybody's going to do anything with it. And I respect that, right? I don't take everybody's advice
Yeah.
either in my life. But
Right.
yeah, I think what I think is interesting that what I see happening is not just us, but I see others in the space, like other property management operating systems or the ILSs or all these companies. It's because, like I said, we want things to be sticky. We want our customer to be able to hold on to that resident. You and I know that there's tremendous value in them staying. It's called vacancy
Sure.
loss, people, because it's lost. You can't get
That's
it back, right? You can't make the money
right.
back. So that is a huge step forward. But I feel like all this talk about the resident is really tricky because we don't have a resident. It's your resident,
Right.
right? So I want to make sure. That's a constant reminder that I give to a lot of folks. So I'm like, yes, we can talk about the resident experience all day long. Come on, please, we have to. It's very important. But what is the customer's resident experience? What do they want? What is it's
Mm,
B2B, B2C? What does the business we're selling to want? Because I can guarantee you, and you know this better than anybody, it's not the same. Can line up
that's right.
companies in Atlanta and one's going, we really care and we'll do whatever to keep them and we want them to stay and be happy and we care about ratings and reviews and surveys and reputation management. Then you go two buildings down, they're like, listen, we're a merchant builder. We got to lease this sucker up and get rid of it and go on to the next one. Where the chips
That's
fall
right.
is where the chips fall, but we got to get heads on beds, get money in the bank. And everybody
That's right.
has a different end goal. So it's important that we speak their language or we do a really good job, our sales and sales engineer team and senior leadership do an excellent job at discovery. So they can say, listen, this is about having something that you can customize to your need and not something that's off the shelf that you're like, you're going to do it this way because this is how it's done. We're like, you don't. It is the most exciting thing to me when we find folks that are looking at it differently, that are going, why do we have to have one person per 100 units? And I
Mm,
do. We have one customer that's eliminated on call. More like,
yeah.
more or less 90%. They hate it. So what can we do to get rid of it? But I can give you a list of people that would go, we have to have that. We've always had that.
Oh,
So
yeah.
yeah, it's fascinating. It's a fascinating time to be in the apartment industry.
We will get back to our interview with Virginia Love in just 1 second. First, leasing teams can spend upwards of 6 hours every week sending welcome letters, following up, collecting documents, and yet residents still show up on move in day unprepared. Move in day sets the tone for your entire relationship with that resident. Getting it right matters. According to Kingsley, residents happy with their move in experience are 59% more likely to renew their lease. Move ins matter. Jenna Miller, the Senior Director of Marketing and Consumer Experience at Bizzuto, says Updater has been instrumental in helping them remove friction from the move in process. They rely on Updater to save leasing teams valuable time and create a consistent and branded move in experience across their entire portfolio. To see Updater in action, visit go.updater.com/Mike. And as a thank you to my listeners, Updater is offering a special gift when you book a demo. Move ins matter. Get them right with Updater. That's go.updater.com/Mike. I'm interested in, along those lines, the discovery process. My imagination tells me that you serve as the conduit between engineers and technologists and the site.
Sales, marketing, product. Yes. In the
Yeah.
industry. Hmm.
Is there a part of that discovery phase where you actually take your engineers and your design teams out and sit them in or on a property, spend a day in the life of? This is more
Yeah,
curious.
we've had some scenarios like that. We're lucky that we have some really great clients near our office in Lehigh,
Sure.
and we've had folks that have gone with customers that we've been working on some really deep, interesting projects that they like send them out to the property and let them be there for 3 days and watch it. Um, we do a lot of, hey, I need 10 people for UX needs 10 people to get on the phone and talk about XYZ, or we have this great UX lab where everybody thinks that, while they're sitting there looking at things online, they all think that we're looking to see where you're clicking, when in fact the system's watching your eyes and where you're looking, right? Like things say, oh, I clicked at the button on the top left. Well, your eyes were on the bottom right, so we can look at that
Right.
information. So we would love to have a lot more of that. We would love it. Time, resources, manpower. But I will say this, we've had a couple of folks from our customer success management team that will go out on site and call on customers. We love to go out and see them on the site level, the end user. That is who I believe we serve the most. And they'll come back and they all say the same thing. They're like, absolutely not. No. How do they do that?
Yeah.
And I remember even back in my former life years ago when I worked for a privately held company in Atlanta, uh, 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 Watermark, um, we had a controller. His name was Peter. We called him the bean counter because he was the controller. And he would get mad about petty cash, about somebody's petty cash being like $1.29 off, and how we need to write them up because they've stolen money. I'm like, how much? Oh my God. And it'd be like $3, $1.79, whatever it is. Or, my friend Maria Del Rey, like taking a 20 out of her purse and hand it and going, saying, okay, they're ahead now. It's like, get over yourself, go out on site. And I remember she told me, take Peter out on site. And we lasted about 45 minutes on the fourth, you know what I mean, of rent week. And he was like,
Yeah.
yeah, I'll never, like, they have no idea. Um,
No.
and so I do every other week for Entrata, I do the new hire call, and I give everybody a kind of a quick 45-minute, here's the different types of properties, here's the different types of customers that we have, here's some resources in the industry. And every time I say the same thing. I was like, if you want to hear, I can't tell you here, but if you see me somewhere in the office and you tell me what story you want. Do you want to be completely grossed out? Do you want to be horrified? Do you want to be embarrassed? I've got them all. You do too. It's like, I've got them all. Right. So, and they love that. We've been trying to figure out a way that we can inform our group in India better about who it is that we build for, because this is not how apartments are handled in India. And we have a new office in Amsterdam. And while it's similar,
Oh,
uh, renting in Europe is not ideal, right? People buy homes, they
yeah.
get out of college, they travel for a while, they come home, they purchase. So we're always
Right.
trying to go, what we know in the US as being in that industry, and what our associates outside of the United States, they have a different experience with it. So we're constantly working and trying to figure out how to get everybody on the same page.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
Horrified?
I
Would
have
you
an
like to be horrified? Yeah, I've got them. I've got those stories.
yeah, yeah, you and me both. Some of that I've tried to like pack way back here. Forget about
Well,
it.
it's like, I was talking about this the other day. It's like, you go to dinner with your friends and your family. Look, how was your day? And I remember sitting around tables, and my friends were, doctors and accountants, worked in radio sales. They would be telling, they'd get to me, and I'd be like, oh, well, this happened. They're like, you have got to be kidding me. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, yeah. I mean, they're like, and I was the one, this, getting paid the least at the time.
Right, right. But they're
He's
like, tell me more, tell me
they're like, you're making this up. This is
more.
just my life. And I'm like, oh, that's not even the worst of them. I mean,
Right, right.
all you need, yeah. So, isn't that terrible?
Oh,
People
we've all
live there. That's where crap happens, where you live, right? People live where we work, where we
that
have business.
that's exactly right. I know we've all said this. Somebody someday is going to curate all these stories and put them in a book or an online book, and it's going to be, or a blog. It's going to be famous. It literally will, because there are so many stories that
I'm going to tell you, I'm here for it. I mean, I think one of the best ways that we learn is by what goes wrong and not what goes right, and where you are able to
Mhm.
walk in. When I used to do a lot of training, how to lease an apartment, and you'd send people out to shop the market. I'd be like, I don't want you to pay attention to what they do well. Pay attention to what they don't do well, and do the
Right.
So,
That's right.
when they didn't acknowledge me when I walked in the office, that kind of felt bad. Okay, well then don't do that, right?
Right.
So, I think that is definitely one of our superpowers as an industry is that it all makes us really good customers, right?
I totally agree with that. Totally agree with that. Speaking of superpowers, what do you think, or let's say, keep this superpower idea out here. What are some of the biggest challenges that you see for property managers or property management companies these days? I mean, you're collecting information, I imagine, like a fire that's just
Yeah.
coming in, and there are themes in that, and I'm just wondering from your perspective, what do you see as the biggest challenges for property managers or companies today?
It's easy, people, easy. Whether it
Mm-hmm.
is labor issues with the fact that they're not able to hire. There was some staggering statistic, like 62% of the site level teams turned over the past 3 years during the pandemic. Because those ones that
That's
didn't
right.
get to sit at home, with their dog at their feet, drinking coffee in their yoga pants, were mad, or they said, "You know what? I don't want to do this anymore." I, and then there's this other part of our industry that we're not really great at talking about our industry. We all know it. We
Mm-hmm.
all know how
That's right.
great it is and what value that we bring, and how much fun we all are. But there's not really. To be honest with you, I give apartments.com a ton of credit, as much credit as I can, because with that campaign with Jeff Goldblum makes renting good for
Yep.
everybody. And during the Super Bowl
Yeah.
on TV, I mean, who else is giving that kind of money to talk about renting? Nobody, nobody.
Right. That's right.
Others have done some, but nobody has gone to that extent. Um, I think that the people thing is, for me, about not just having the right number of people or bodies in the office. uh, this is a problem that we can solve. You hit on it earlier. It doesn't pay. The pay scale should be better for their responsibility. Where else is someone over at Waterton? We had one deal, Presidential Towers in downtown Chicago. You'll know it as a Chicago person. That
That's
was
right.
purchased for over $500 million, and we put an additional $55 million into the deal. Um, who in their lifetime is going to ever have that type of responsibility? So when folks say I'm just a leasing consultant, it breaks my heart. And I
Yeah.
said it, oh, I'm just a leasing consultant. I'm like, no, 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 no. You're in charge of sales and marketing for a multi-million-dollar asset. You can tell all your
That's
friends
right.
that do other things that you're and who owns your property? Is it a retirement teachers fund? You're responsible for
Right.
40,000 teachers in the state of Ohio, or what is behind it. And I don't think that we as an industry teach that enough. They don't. I speak all over the country, and I usually ask that when I'm walking around and say, hey, what do you do? I'm just a lease consultant. I'm just a lease consultant. And then I'll say, tell me how much you think your property's worth. And it'll be some gorgeous new construction, in the middle of downtown Houston, and they'll say probably like $10 million. Like $10 million, probably like $150 million. We,
Right.
as an industry, we owe it to our people to elevate them and let them know they're not only their what they not what they bring to the table, but their worth. Not
That's
just how
right.
much work they're doing, but how much they do for what value they bring to the property and to the company. Um, Technology is great. Trust me, I love it. There's things that I'm looking at now that we're working on that are just we're working on a long-term project right now with a group that we're thinking way outside the box, and I love that stuff. But when everything comes back, somebody's got to do it. Somebody's got to manage it.
That's
Somebody's
right.
Chat GPT is fantastic. AI is the best. All the centralization or centralizing inputs, whatever, great. But somebody has to be on the backside watching it, changing it, editing it, making sure it's being executed. It's not, we have to find we have to find the right people, get them trained, and retain them in the industry so we all can have a plan beyond you, me, and everybody else watching this. In 15 years, it's gonna be a whole new group. Fingers crossed.
That's right. That's
People
right.
is it. People is what the most important part.
I believe that it's
Yeah.
I think technology, to your point, is awesome. It's the shiny thing that everybody wants to pay attention to and play with. But at the end of the day, it's really you and me. And I know we're sitting
Mhm.
virtually, but being able to look each other in the eye
Yeah.
without a bunch of distraction and have a relationship. And
Yeah.
maybe that produces business. Maybe it produces a testimony for you and I to tell to somebody else at some point in time that's helpful to them. But it's that's where it's really at is
And I think
relationship.
the funny thing about this business is, and you see it, like I was mentioning earlier, the other trends like mold and bed bugs and all this kind of stuff. Oh my God, what's the new thing? What's the new thing? Like you said, something shiny is that, but there's no magic bullet. The magic bullet is the people. Because, and I was
That's right.
explaining to one of our groups recently about the 4 Ps, and they're like, oh, so, okay, so price. I'm like, no, 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 prices last. The reason why prices last is because it's people, product, promotion, price, because the right people know that the product has to be ready and clean and marketable.
Mhm.
And then the promotions have to be in place and tracked and nurtured. And then you price it. Nothing breaks my little property management black heart more than having to give away rent because the property looks like crap, right?
Right.
Nothing. And
That's
I've
right.
done it. You've done it. I have gone, just throw the rents underneath the bus. Let's get people in there, then we'll figure it out. But we know we're losing ground.
Right.
Um, but what's really interesting about that is there's very little surprises in that department in this business. Very rarely in my 30, almost 33 years, have 10 apartments come empty overnight that I didn't know about. Right? Like
Right.
20. We do have a crystal ball. There is a occupancy. We do require, people are contractually obligated. We do take notices. So you have to be very, very, you have to have a team that's willing to look at everything every day and be able to make decisions that are smart in the moment and not wait for things to, turn completely south. But that goes
Yeah.
back to people too.
That's right. I want to stick with this theme, although I want to switch gears a little bit. So our mission at Multifamily Collective is to tease out human potential in the multifamily space. And so I think your personal story as it relates, because you have a diverse experience, and I think a lot of times people see failure as a definition of me rather
Mm.
than, hey, I learned something that I can carry forward. I'm just interested. Do you have a story about, let's call it failure for sake of conversation, but something that you didn't come
Complete
out the way you
bombed.
wanted it to, and
Yeah.
and you've yeah, right, exactly, and but something you've employed in your life
How
that
much
made you a better
how much
person.
time do we have about the thing? Listen, when I say that, I know more about things that didn't go right more than things that have gone wrong more than things that go right. Uh, uh, I mean, that is something that I kind of live and breathe by. I'm not a big, I didn't grow up being a big risk taker. I grew up being very cautious. My sister was the one jumping off the high dive, Katie barred the door, and I was like, oh, that doesn't look safe. I'm still have a little bit of that in me. But years ago, I was told not to do something, not to do, and I worked for a company which is now Camden, but at the time they were some, and they had a defiance award. That's really
Oh, a
tempting.
defiance award. I like that.
I really, God, I kind of want my name attached to the defiance award, right? Like anybody can win best NOI or highest occupancy or best looking model, but who's going to win? They told me not to do it, and I did it anyway. It made it work out. Um, so this is a two-part situation where the first one I tried, it did not work out. And I was told not
Okay.
to do it, and I did it anyway. And it
Okay.
didn't work out, and it resulted in a little bit of a hiccup. But you were in a safe space. We used to call Summit not so much a company as it was kind of a cult. Now that we all look
Oh,
back, we're like, that was a really interesting way to do business. But you had a fence. I knew my fence. If you were my boss, I knew your fence, and I knew your boss's fence and your boss's boss's fence. So I knew how far out I could go before I was at risk. So I went
got it.
as far as I could go, right? And we're like, yeah, that didn't work out, but I can fix it. And yeah, I remember the days back in the days after Summit when I did work for Greg Loznak at Waterton. I used to call him like, okay, something's gone on. He goes, can you fix it? And I'm like, well, yeah, I can, but I need to. You don't even. You don't have to tell me. Just fix it, right? Like he's like, why are we gonna just go? If you can fix it, go fix it. So I look back, and that situation was about occupancy and rents and how we were capturing the leads. This is back way before the internet, and I mean, so we took a risk. We rolled the dice. It did not pay. Um, Fast forward a couple of months later, I'd already got my hand slapped once. I'm like, yeah, that wasn't that bad. So I'm going to do it again. I did it again, and it paid. It
The
paid
same
big.
thing. You did the same thing
Same
again.
thing. Same thing. So it was a property in Atlanta on Glenridge Drive. It's called Carriages or something now. I can't remember the name of Charleston Carriage. Anyway, whatever. It was called Summit Glen at the time, and we had all these 3 bedrooms that were over the pool, and
Okay.
we had no parking, none. Like, where's my friends going to park? And we would literally say, you're not going to have any friends that come. You have to make new friends. I mean, it was just like, you got to own it, right? At some point you go, oh, well, there's 2 extra spaces and they're in the back of the property. And hopefully, fingers crossed, your people get it. I mean, like before Uber, no cabs in Atlanta, still aren't any cabs in Atlanta. So you just would say, you know, you're going to make new friends. So we really leaned into the pool and the fact that we had some really good looking single people at the property. It was like those that
Okay.
would
Okay.
show Melrose Place. It was Melrose Place. And so we had wagered a leasing bet on it. It didn't go as well. Like I said, the first time, a couple of months later, we were getting into the summer leasing season. And I'm like, you know what? I think it was timing. Now I have pools. I have good looking folks, fun folks, loud music. Uh, and I moved everything to the property, everything. Like, like you at the front, you're filling out the guest card, then let's go take the tour. I was like, forget it. I don't want anybody in the front. Put everything in the back. Take them out to the pool to fill out the guest card. Take them out to the pool. Unlock the vacants. Nobody has to go get a key. This is, we had just got rid of master keys. Everybody go, everything. And they would literally be sitting there. Oh, and tell me do you have a pet, Mike? Do you have a pet? No. Uh-huh, yeah. Is that one available? I mean, like, they were in. So I learned that was not the only time I fell away, but I learned in that one, I was like, okay, you got to have more pros than cons. You don't have to have all pros, but your pros have to outweigh your cons. And at the time I thought I could overcome the more significant cons for the lack of pros. But all it took for that idea to work, and we did other ones where we would put people in models and pretend like they lived there and just send you out guest card and have you knock on the door and a guy's there going, "Hey, welcome! I've got the game on. You want a piece of pizza? I love living here." I mean, we did all kind of crazy. That is actually really a good idea for now. I mean, like, you got to stand out. You know what I mean? Like, absolutely. You can't, I mean, come on. Nobody wants to show an apartment at 4:00 in the afternoon. You've looked at it 1,000 times when you're leasing. But I did win the Defiance Award. I did. And I wore that like a crown. They also had a thing called a SOFI, a Summit Opportunity for Improvement. I love this. Where if you found
Say
something.
that one more time.
It's called a SOFI, a Summit Opportunity for Improvement, where if you found something that would improve the processes on the site, you would submit it. And one of the ones that I submitted was back in the day, we had service requests. Remember, they were in triplicate. Maybe you don't remember. Yeah. You filled them out and you left the yellow one for this person and the pink one over here, and they left this one in the office and took this one to the resident. And we were trying to get additional income. And we kept on seeing people, this is going to ring true, people with pets in the office that didn't pay for a pet, those folks.
Oh, yep.
And so I was like, we had our service team add a little square that said it was a pet in the leasing office. I mean, it was a pet in the apartment when you did the service request. Yes.
Yeah.
Or so what kind? Circle, cat, or dog, or whatever, bird, whatever. And we started tracking that. And as I would go in, I was assistant manager, and I would go in and settle up the service request, at the end of the day, I would check and say, Mike doesn't have a pet dog. So then I'd send them this super cute letter congratulating them on their new fur baby and say, give me your money, right? And so we added it to the service request. So
I love
it's
that.
definitely Friday afternoon. I've got 1,000 of those stories, but no, yeah. But that, I thought that was great. I love you have a company that celebrated you, A, thinking outside the box in a big way, and B, yeah, what this. You go out on site and they're like, yeah, we don't understand why it does that way. I'm like, I don't either. They have all the good ideas out on the
That's
site.
right.
Yeah, because they're doing the job. So
Yeah, that's right.
why do we all think that we can solve for them? What do you need? I had the honor of working with Sherry Freitas, who's at Rangewater, still a really good friend of mine, a great client of ours. And she used to ask everybody when we'd go visit properties, she goes, what do you need? If I gave you a blank check, what would you buy? She asked
Yeah,
everybody
yeah.
that question. What do you need? I need an additional porter, or we need a new computer for the maintenance team. If you get a blank check, what do you need? They never asked for, we need another building with a better fitness center. It was always like,
Right.
like they know what they need to drive business.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
exactly right. Well, I want to end cap our time together with sort of still playing in this theme a little bit. Those are fantastic stories, by the way. I assume we could talk for like 3 more hours and share stories. It would be fantastic.
I have a dinner reservation at 7, so you just.
Oh, no. Okay, we won't make you late for that.
Yeah.
And the Cubs are losing drastically right now.
8 nothing. I'm watching it like crazy.
I knew it! I knew it!
Just the score, not the game, just the score. Yeah, man, top of the 7th. We can probably shut this one down, but anyway.
It's terrible. I'm really sad right now. Okay, so young professionals in the industry, you talked a little bit about that early on in our conversation about, youth in your company, youth in your student housing, the student housing portion, like 900,000 of them. If you were giving said 900,000 plus the several, let's say 100 people in your organization, if you were giving them advice today, especially those that are aspiring to grow in the property management industry into leadership roles and roles of influence and responsibility, what piece of advice would you give to them?
Say yes. Yes a lot. Say yes a lot. Can you go to Cincinnati in the dead of winter and fill in for a manager for a week? Absolutely. I can. Like, make yourself as indispensable as possible. Not only in physically being there, but also in ideas and, do the stuff that other people don't want to do. Some people, I don't want to work the weekends. I don't want to do this. I think the two best things I ever did for my career is saying yes a lot. I did stints in Boston after 9/11. I remember Greg Lozenak. I'd just taken a job with ING Clarion. He goes, you need to go to Boston. I'm like, when? He goes, tomorrow. I said, okay, so just for the week. He's like, no, you need to be there at least a month. A month? I just started the job, and I was like, okay. I trust him. I still trust him. I trusted him, and he knew that who was on that team and that property in the middle of, Cambridge, with a lot of folks that fled because they were from the Middle East going to Harvard and MIT.
Sure.
That he knew we got to have some people. We have to. You're going to learn. Here's how you're going to learn how we do business. Is you're going to go out there and live amongst it. Or Cincinnati in the dead of winter was another one that I had. So I said yes a lot. The other smartest thing I've done for my career was get active in the apartment association, and I did that early. In Atlanta, we used to say, before you do anything, you have to be on membership committee. It's kind of like where you cut your teeth, right? And I didn't know what the apartment association did on a local, state, or national level, or something like NMHC or IRM. But when I explain to folks, or if like on that new hire call that I do with Entrata, and I give them resources like NMHC's website or NAA's website and things like that, they're like, are you kidding me? Like, NAA has this great website that generates how much how many jobs, how much taxes, property taxes the industry is paying by county, by state. We are NAA.org, and it's a great tool for the site teams to be able to go and understand the gravity of what it is that they do. Um, but yeah, that would have never known, and it progressed my career not only within companies, but outside. Luckily, I got to be chairperson of the association. I was on the board and chaired it in 2011 and chaired Georgia in 2018. And it's still something I never saw for myself. I wanted to be on the board. And when they called and told me I was going up the ranks, because you got like 4 years to prepare, I was like, oh, that's hysterical. And they're like, no. I was like, I was the first and probably only marketing person that has ever done that job in Atlanta. Uh, but the folks that participate in the apartment associations across the country, or NMHC or IRM across the country at whatever level, those are the folks that are invested in this industry. You're constantly representing your company, the industry. You have an opportunity to teach, train, mentor, be a reference, be a resource. And it was those two things. I said yes to that, so I guess you could tie the two together. But yeah, I mean, just don't limit yourself. Think big. I mean, I look at people like, Kate Good, who is someone I've known my whole career. She's building property. She's like, I always wanted to do it and didn't figure out how I could do it. Look at me doing it. And
That's right.
could not be prouder of her. But she saw what she stuck to her, to her end goal. But yeah, say yes. You never know. You might find out something that you didn't know that you really like to do.
That's right. That's right. I love those two pieces of advice. And I think, yes, if you're a youngster, I'm allowed to say that because I have a gray beard now, a youngster in this industry, listen to that advice because it will serve you well. And do the reps, go in and do the
Yes.
work.
That's right. Like, I always think it's funny because I remember back in my old life, is that people like, I've been leasing apartments for 6 months. I'm ready to be an assistant. I'm like, oh, you're adorable.
Mm, yes, that's right.
But then there were other people that we promoted within 2 months of being hired because they said yes, because they were indispensable, because they, you know, I had, I've worked with folks that say things like, no one's trained me. I was like, what have you done for yourself? Have you read anything? Have
Right.
you get on, listen to a bunch of podcasts or watch a bunch of things on YouTube, or you're responsible for your own success. So, figure
That's
it out.
exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Well, Virginia, it has been an absolute pleasure. I can't wait to meet you in person, give you a big hug,
You're right
shake
down
your
the
hand,
road.
whatever.
Technically right down the road. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
That's
We're
right.
just gonna
Yeah.
go, and the world is gonna hate us for it. But it is
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it is we're gonna get together. And I'm gonna remind you that on this day at 4:03, on the 4th of
Oh, no.
the Cubs are behind the Atlanta Braves 8-0. So anyway,
Oh, dagger to the
dagger to the
heart.
heart.
That's
I
not.
thank you so much for having me and letting me share some information with your listeners. I'm a big fan of what it is that you do, and I was watching a couple of them this week in preparation, like Mike Walling, and who I love and adore, and some different folks. And so it's such a great program, and it's my honor to be a part of it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that, and I receive that. It's a labor of love. So thank you so much for investing time. And for everyone else, we'll see you next time on Collective Conversations.